Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Scruffy Movies podcast. I'm Zach Wallace,
And I'm John Crocker.
and today we are about 2 weeks out from the release of Captain Marvel, so we thought, why not throw our hat in the ring of reviews and just talking about what we thought about the movie and everything, and also Crocker just saw it last night, and we saw it together, actually, and when the movie was over, I turned to him and said, "So what did you think?" And he turned to me and said, "I'm not going to tell you until tomorrow." So I'm very interested to know his full thoughts on Captain Marvel and stuff. But it's really just going to be like a review, mostly podcast, us just kind of talking about the movie, some theories that might have come from it and everything like that. So just kind of a little fun one today. Not really a lot of like deep analyzation of like movie franchises or anything, just like a little review podcast.
Yep, and I guess that's a good place to start as any is to just kind of get some thoughts out there just for a first time viewing. And I really feel like this movie was one that I kind of had to like sit on for a minute and think about, because I'll admit that when I left the theaters, it was like, yeah, I enjoyed it. Like it looked good. It was, a Marvel movie and everything you would expect. But it was just kind of like there was a little bit of a meh in there with it too. Kind of like the same thing when you first left after seeing episode 8, how you were like, it had all the things, but did I really like it, And I think that at the end of the day, Captain Marvel is a solid, I would say like mid-range Marvel movie, probably low mid-range, because in my mind, I definitely have like top tier Marvel movies, like, the Avengers, most of the Avenger movies, first Iron Man, they're all kind of like up there at the very tippy top. And then you have sort of that mid range where it's a lot of the origin stories, and then sort of the bottom range, which is really only like Hulk standalone movie and maybe Thor 2 or something like that. And I would see this being above that bottom range, because I would probably watch it again for fun before I watch those. But it's definitely, not high mid-range, if that makes any sense. I think, does that kind of give you an idea of where I might place this in the MCU?
Yeah, and that's a lot of like what I've been hearing. A lot of people are like giving it the props that it deserves for it being like the first like female superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to get her own movie by herself. But I have been hearing a lot of people that are just kind of like, like solid entry. Nobody's really like, once they see it, I don't know of anybody that's been like, it's the best one ever. It's the greatest one. Everybody's just kind of like, yeah, solid entry. It was very entertaining. Good. Ready for Endgame now. But
I had some problems too with it being the first women entry into the MCU. I mean, I think they kind of wasted it on her. I would have loved, I know we've said this 1,000 times, but we've got Black Widow. She already exists. Let's do a movie about her. She would have been great.
It's coming next year.
Pepper Potts is, what's her name? Rescue? Isn't that who she is?
Yeah, she I don't know if she could have held her own movie.
Oh, dude, I think she could have, especially a period piece before Pepper was Pepper, maybe. Well, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Maybe like a Disney Plus series, for sure.
I don't know.
With like her and Happy Hogan.
I just wasn't anywhere near as invested, I don't think, in her character. Like, this is a good way to put it. I care more about the movie she was in. I care more about the things going on in the movie in Captain Marvel than I did about Captain Marvel herself. She seemed to be there because without her being there, the rest of the movie wouldn't make any sense. But seeing the Skrulls on scene, or on the big screen, seeing young Nick Fury, like Tesseract, all that, like it was a lot of those things that I wanted to see, but I cared more about them than I did about her, I felt like.
Well, I actually liked her character a lot. I really like Captain Marvel, and especially the first time I watched this movie, I liked it a lot, and I still like it a lot. But after talking with people, it is kind of the same as you had mentioned with Last Jedi, where I walked out of Last Jedi and I was like, yeah, I really liked it. And then as I started to talk to people and they brought up really good points, I was like, oh, Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so. Okay. So I still really enjoy it. I think it's better than The Last Jedi for sure, but
Yeah.
it it I really enjoy Carol Danvers the character, and I really liked what they did with her in this movie, and I'm really excited to see her story continue in Endgame and then eventually Phase 4, because she's definitely going to be like one of the big players throughout the rest of the MCU, at least for a pretty good minute, I would say.
Yeah, they need to square her away as far as like the character that she plays. I guess that's weird because that can mean a thousand different things. But like she tries to be funny sometimes when she's really not, and then she's usually just kind of like stubborn and snarky, and like that's cool if you do it kind of maybe like Iron Man does it, where it actually kind of works. But to me, I didn't like her. And again, I hope they sort of rework this a little bit, but in the first 5 minutes of the movie, when she's fighting old dude who is like at the time, oh, by the way, spoilers abound, so if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie,
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie, then I mean, of course, spoilers. It's been 2 weeks. You've had 2 weeks.
exactly. So she's fighting her mentor. I forget his name off the top of my head, but
Jon Rog.
yeah, fighting him, and he's like, hey, it's a fair fight, like, don't use your powers or whatever, where when you can beat, I don't know if he says when you can beat me, then you'll truly be ready, but he says that eventually. But they're fighting, and then she loses and gets upset, and there's like a big pause where the fight is over, and then she still just blasts him, and then no less than like 5 minutes later, she's like smarting off when they're actually on assignment and like in doing hardcore stuff, and winds up getting abducted and everything else. So I don't know, like to me that's just that annoying character. Like she was the annoying character in the first 20 minutes of her own movie.
See, I didn't get that. I think that that's just her character. I think that she developed more once she realized that she was Carol and not Veers, as they called her in the first 20 minutes. But I think a lot of the snarkiness came from her inability to remember who she was. And so, in lack of basically a personality, because a personality is really just memories that you've made that have shaped who you are, in lack of that, she's kind of taken like, oh, everyone here is really like kind of more prim and proper. And even, I mean, like they're making fun of Korath in it because he's a Kree. They're like, oh, you never laugh. And all of the Krees throughout the movie, we never see them like smile or having a good time or anything. So maybe from like lack of memory, she just starts kind of mouthing off. She feels like she's an outsider, and that's her way in. She doesn't know what she's doing, and she feels sad about it. So kind of to express that is being like a smart ass character. And I don't think she was ever really like smart alecky once the actual mission started. Like when they were in the ship and she was like, ha ha ha. But then as soon as Jude Law walked on and he's like, all right, cut it out, let's go, here's the mission, she stood up and was like ready to go. She wasn't like playing around or anything for the rest of the mission.
Yeah, when they got down on the ground and she was like, let me go by myself, I can handle it. She
What?
said
That's not being a smart aleck. She's saying I can handle it.
yeah, it was in a smart ass way. She felt sort of like a smart ass to me in the beginning, which, I mean, I get it, whatever. If you don't have memories, then you've got to pull from something. But I've seen plenty of films that have featured amnesia where it didn't seem like that to me. But we can talk more about her later. What do you think we should start, like maybe go through some of the things we liked about the movie a lot, some of the stuff we wanted to see, and then get into some of the problems we had?
Yeah. So for me, I really loved the setting. I'm glad that they made it 90s. I think that added a lot to the movie. I really love the soundtrack of it all. I really like the characters in it. I really especially enjoyed when Carol and Nick Fury were together. I feel like they had really good chemistry together. I like Talos, who is the main Skrull. I thought he did a really good job. Basically, like all of the characters and the actors portraying those characters, I thought did a really good job. And I really enjoyed the movie overall. It was just a good movie to me. And I don't know if it like speaks any differently or anything to different people, my wife gained like a totally different perspective that we talked about on the way home. One of the issues I had with the movie was like her favorite part of it because she's a woman and everything. And so we'll talk about that a little later, but it was like a totally different perspective for her that she had gleaned from the movie than I had. And so it's really interesting to like sit down and talk about that kind of stuff. But for me overall, I mean, I just enjoyed the movie overall, especially the characters and everything. I thought they did a really good job of like portraying them.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome that, we actually got to see more of the Kree, more of the Skrulls. We got to see young Fury, young Coulson, which this might be the first movie I've ever seen where they just totally went all in on the de-aging thing, and it wasn't just like for a flashback or because someone died, or like they used that technology as a big piece of the movie. And I can't think of any other movie that I've seen where they've really done it and it's been that good, because it was probably the first movie I've ever seen where you saw that person's face and you didn't think, oh, they fiddled with it just a little bit. Because usually you always think that. Like, you can sort of see that something doesn't line up. Yeah. And maybe it was because they did a good job like preparing us for that. And so we expected it when we got there versus, it just sort of blindsiding you when you get there that, oh, you're going to have the scene where we take 30 years off of them. We kind of went in knowing exactly what we were going to see the entire time, but it was smooth, man. It was real smooth.
Yeah, that Marvel's used that technology before at the very first Ant-Man movie where they de-aged Michael Douglas, and it also looked really good as well. I think it really makes a difference having like the actor on set, and them doing everything, and you can just de-age them versus where I can like tell stuff is weird was like Rogue One, like that wasn't really Carrie Fisher at the end, or that wasn't really Grand Moff Tarkin. And then in Furious 7, I could tell that like in some scenes that wasn't really Paul Walker. Like their faces were just off for certain things. But I think actually having the actor there, and so they're already on set, they're like doing everything, and maybe they had like little dots on their faces. Like somehow sometimes I know people do that for like motion capture and stuff. Maybe they had, even if it was like minimalistic, just like a couple on their cheeks or something throughout the movie, and that probably helped them a lot too.
Yeah, I don't know enough about how all that works, but all I know is that, as you mentioned, in Star Wars and Fast and Furious and everything else, we've seen it before, and it was always pretty obvious when they were doing it. But this time, I mean, it was great. Like, you didn't notice it at all. I didn't notice it at all.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Which, just goes into sort of the bigger thing that we mentioned slightly earlier was, I mean, the film looked great. Like, it was spectacular. It was, I loved I think it was the Kree planet. That was fantastic. Now, there were a few scenes like where they were really getting into like the 90s grunge thing where it was just really kind of gray and bland, but I think that sort of played its part. But there were definitely some really, really good looking bits of the movie, and the soundtrack was awesome too. So visually and audio wise, it was pretty stunning.
Yeah, I agree. The soundtrack was one of my favorite parts of the whole movie.
Yeah, definitely. It was like the same guy that did like 70s, 80s, 70s really, I guess, for Guardians. Was like, it feels to me like they hired him to do this one too.
Yeah, they're like, all right, now for the 90s. Now do it for the 90s.
Exactly. Which that was a little weird too, because there was enough flashing back and forth where at some points, like, I didn't know if we were looking at the 90s or if we were going back a little bit before that, like maybe back even into like the 80s or the 70s. And then I think they sort of explained it a little bit on in, let you know where you were at to kind of ground you and give you a frame of reference. But that was a little confusing at first. But I think that's just, I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to something.
Oh, like seeing some of Carol's flashbacks and stuff?
Yeah, and when they get Marvel in for the first time, like, I wasn't really sure where that was because there was a 65 Mustang sitting there. I was like,
I think that was the 80s because they even talk about later, even when it was 6 years ago in 1989, Maria is talking to Carol and she's like, yeah, you said that you were going to drive your Mustang and I knew my Corvette could whip you or something like that. So I think that's just her car.
yeah,
But yeah.
it was a Camaro, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, whatever. The Fast and Furious franchise is my extent of car knowledge.
Yeah, I know.
I know the words Skyline and Dodge Charger.
There you go. And we got to see a lot of Fury, which was really cool. I mean, that's what I've been begging for that since day one. Like, you know, I've wanted him to. I would love to see him in his own movie, like see more of a Shield style, like Agents of Shield style, behind the scenes look at what Fury is doing to keep the Avengers together and all of that. Like, I would really like to see more of that. And we got a decent bit, and I think, was it one of the Thor movies? I can't remember which movie it was, but we do get a lot of Fury in at least a couple of other movies, but nowhere near to the level we did in this one by any means.
No, this one I would argue that he's almost like the second main character in this one. Like, it is Carol and then it's Fury. And he has always been, at least in any of the other movies he's in. I mean, like, he's a big part in Winter Soldier and stuff like that. But even then, I feel like, you know, he's rounding up like fourth or fifth. You know what I mean? Like, there's Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Black Widow before him. Then Nick Fury comes in. But in this one, he was like the co-pilot.
Which movie was it where they were like escaping the compound that was getting blown up and Fury was in the truck?
Yeah, Winter Soldier?
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. For some reason, I was thinking that was Loki that was causing all that.
No, Winter Soldier.
Ah.
Yeah, but he's always been like fourth or fifth tier, but I think he was the co-pilot in this one. And that was one of the big reasons, like, I enjoyed the movie so much. And I honestly wouldn't have minded if they kept it more grounded, you know, and focused more on Carol's backstory and everything, which is one of the big kind of complaints I heard about the movie, is that Carol just doesn't feel fleshed out, you know, like she doesn't, like all of her memories and everything in the past, we get glimpses of it and stuff, you know, but then in the climax when she has her big stand-up moment, they up until that point had only shown like 2 of those flashbacks and everything else was just put in there for her stand-up moment. And it seems like they included more of like the Fury and the Coulson and all that stuff, and it kind of sacrificed Carol's backstory for it a little bit.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I don't know if they sacrificed the backstory for the others to have screen time or whatever, but I definitely agree that it's not very well fleshed out. I mean, we can get into this when we get into all of that, but I'm still not 100% sure what her backstory is. Like, is she 100% human that is infused with Kree, or is she full Kree and was brought to Earth, or is she half and half? And if so, then who's the other half? Was it Marvel because all we saw was her dad? Like, why can she take a freaking the Tesseract to the chest or whatever that was? Like the Infinity motor, the Lightspeed motor. Like, why didn't she die? Like, there's so many questions I feel like that just went completely unanswered. It was, and I think that if done correctly, you can make a movie where someone has amnesia and all you know about that character is what they know about themselves. And that can be an awesome movie. I can't think of any examples, but I'm sure that there's probably some out there where like you come in totally unknowing just like they do, and it's a great movie. But for this movie, I feel like they tried to sprinkle in some background and then just completely failed. Other than getting laughed at by boys for her entire life, we really don't learn anything about her at all.
I think that and I know this a little bit more just because I've watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it's kind of what happened to Coulson. Basically, when she shot the energy core, it exploded and she absorbed its power, but it almost killed her. And then so when Jan Rog like grabbed her at the side of the lake or whatever, and they brought her back up, they did a blood transfusion because Kree blood is known to like heal humans super fast. And that's basically what happens to Coulson in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's how he's brought back to life after he was killed in the Avengers, is Fury infects him with Kree blood. And that makes even kind of more sense now that I think about it. I hadn't even made that connection before. The entire reason Fury would know that would be because of Captain Marvel. That's interesting. I never thought about that. But so I think she was fully human, but now she's been like, she has the Kree blood running through her veins. So it doesn't give her any like extraterrestrial powers or anything other than the fact that she healed quickly from that one thing. So she's human. She's just has the energy core inside her, and it makes her super powerful. She can just like draw on the energy core's power whenever she needs.
That still doesn't give me any background to her at all.
She's human. She's not
okay.
Kree.
Okay, one question has been answered.
Just Kree blood transfusion, because Jan-Rog mentions that.
Yes, and I got that, which is why I was like, okay, but is she now half Kree? I don't know.
No,
I mean, I see what you're saying.
That doesn't infect her at all. It could potentially infect her mind, which is what happened to Coulson. He started drawing like the Kree glyphs and symbols that we saw in Marvel's notebook when they were in the S.H.I.E.L.D. compound. He was drawing similar things to that, and it was basically leading them to a map where the Kree had laid this land for people to find, and it was like a home world for Inhumans.
Gotcha.
So no, not like half Kree or anything, but it did help bring her back to life.
Yeah, I still feel like for a origin movie, there was not really a lot of origin with it. I mean, you saw how she got her powers. You saw a big story. I mean, it was again, it wasn't a terrible movie, but I feel like as far as backgrounds go, we probably are a little lacking on this one compared to the others.
Yeah, I think especially because, gosh, I'm actually looking at my Marvel movies right now, and I'm trying to think of what the last like legitimate, I guess the last legitimate origin story we got was probably Doctor Strange back in 2016, I believe. That was probably the first one, because we have Spider-Man and Black Panther coming out in between that, but both of those characters were already introduced in Captain America Civil War. So they were already introduced. This is the first movie where Carol has like been in. And so this is the first one that that we met her and like knew who she was. So it's been a while since they've done like just an origin story.
Well, I mean, I think Black Panther was a great origin story. I mean, it told all about the Black Panther heritage. You got to see the history of Dude Buddy himself and his family, and the history of Rwanda and all the tribes, and then with Doctor Strange.
Did you just say Rwanda?
Yeah, did I?
Wakanda.
Yeah, it rhymes. It was close. It was the same synapses fired. And then in Strange, you get to see, how he was just a stuck-up, like, rich doctor and bummed his hands up and had to, like, really go through a lot of personal change and growth, and, with guidance from the girl who looks like Aang from the Waterbender or the Airbender. So there are lots of even, I would say, like, quick little rundowns you get in these movies that if we just got one of those in Captain Marvel, then I would feel better about her character's past. But again, I'm sure it was on purpose. Like, I truly believe that they made her shallow specifically because they didn't really want you to know anything about her that she didn't know about her. And they wanted you to uncover that as she uncovered that, which, again, I totally get, but I think that they just needed another 10 minutes worth of that uncovering.
Yeah, and this movie was kind of short for a Marvel movie, which leads me to believe that maybe some of that was cut, because Marvel movies are typically, like 2 hours, 20 minutes, 2 hours, 15 minutes, 2 hours, 25 minutes. I mean, like, they normally more or less like hit that mark. And this one was almost 2 hours on the dot. It was 2 hours and 4 minutes, but with credits and everything, really the movie ran about an hour 45 probably. And so it kind of was cut short a little bit for a Marvel movie. So maybe some of that stuff is out there just on the cutting room floor, and they thought, oh, we don't need it for this movie, or, you know, oh, people understand it, you know, and kind of had like their eye so close to the lens that they couldn't take it back for a second and be like, oh no, this is needed. Because, I mean, the movie makes sense without it. I was never, like, lost in the movie. But I do agree with you. I feel like if that was in there, then there would have been more of a connection. And I think a lot more people would have been like, ah, oh, yeah. Instead of just kind of be like, oh, all right.
Well, should we roll into some other things that I think kind of let me down?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like we're just talking about everything. So
yeah, my notes, I have like about like one iPhone screen's length of notes worth on this, and there is zero order to it at all. So I'm going to be looping around all over the place. But I would say that this movie was chock full of moments that were kind of just letdowns too. Like the Stan Lee cameo was not super great in my opinion compared to all the others, and I know that there could be all kinds of reasons for that. His health probably at the time was top of that list, and I think it was awesome that he was practicing his lines from Mallrats.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Like that was super cool. That was probably one of my favorite things about the entire movie, is just to get that little plug, you know, to like his last cameo was sort of a flipping script literally of his own cameo in another franchise. I love that. Thought that was great.
Yeah.
But it was a little quick. It was just kind of a flash. And I mean, they did all this Force Stand stuff in the beginning, and I don't know if that scene may have been shot and planned and done and wrapped long before they ever knew that, you know, he was really taking a turn for the worse there at the end. But that was kind of just a letdown for me. I thought that it was going to be bigger. I thought that, and I'm gonna go through a couple here. I thought that when Fury lost his eye, like I thought that was probably gonna be a little bit of a bigger deal. Like I thought
that's probably my number one issue with the movie. I don't like that they did that.
And I want to love it. I like Goose. I like that when he says, "Oh, it's just a cat scratch or something," and then the scroll is like shaking his head, like that. I liked. I wanted to like it, but I don't know. And then they just dropped the thing off with all the glass eyes in it, and it just did not live up to some of the hype, I guess, that I had built maybe in my own head. And I credit my own self for misleading myself on that, but it just did not live up to expectations.
No, and I've talked about this with a couple people before. If they hadn't treated it in The Winter Soldier and a couple other movies as a very serious thing that happened to this character, because he's saying the last time I trusted somebody is when I got this, and then they use it in The Winter Soldier as kind of like you deleted my good eye from the system, but you got to keep both eyes open, and that's like the first time you see it, and it's gruesome and it's grim, and so they treated it as a serious plot point. And I think treating it as a serious plot point led to the fact that because it started with a joke of a cat scratching it, where everyone kind of was like, oh. If they hadn't treated it as serious of a plot point, I don't think many people would have cared. But the fact that we had already gotten the backstory of this was a serious thing that happened to this character that you like, and then it just ended up being all a lie, was a little bit of like didn't like that.
Yeah, and they played up to it, right? Because he does like trust the cat. You know, right. He 100% trusts that cat.
And he even says, like word for word on the spaceship, I trust you. He says, I trust you not to eat me, but he still says, I'm trusting you.
Right. So it's like it's like this entire movie, they're playing to what you want. They're just not doing it right, in my opinion. I don't know. And again, I'm critiquing it because I love Marvel and I want them to succeed.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and even when I watched it, I laughed, you know. It's funny. It's a funny moment, and it's funny to be like, oh, that's how he got it. Haha. But then the more you think about it, the more you're like, No, probably shouldn't have done that way.
That's why that right there is why I think there are a lot of parallels between this movie and episode 8, is because on the surface they've done oh, what does that sound mean?
That means it's halftime. Man, halftime came fast this week.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to complete that thought real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I think this is a lot like episode 8 because on the surface it looks the way you think it should, but by the time you actually sit down and think about it, actually use your brain, which is out of the moment of watching the movie, it just kind of doesn't add up, doesn't make any sense, and maybe lets you down a little.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from.
All right. Halftime.
All right, everybody, welcome to Halftime. If you haven't listened to the show before, this is the part of our show where Crocker and I take a break from the conversation we're having to talk about some recent movie trailers, movie news, movies we've seen that we're excited about that we haven't dedicated a whole episode to yet. And we've also, during this time, been giving away our free digital copies. And this week, we're actually going to give away another double feature, and it's going to be both of the old Fantastic Four movies, Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer. So if you want to enter to win free digital copies of both of those, all you got to do is comment the code word TORCH below on the YouTube video you're watching right now, or send me a direct message at Scruffy Movies on Instagram. Again, the code word is TORCH. And if you comment that on the YouTube video below or direct message me at Scruffy Movies on Instagram, the code word, you'll be entered to win free digital copies of Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Flame on.
Yep. I didn't know what to say to that.
All right, so got a few things down for halftime this week. Are we good just to jump into it?
Yeah, I mean, this has been an insane week for movie trailers. My Lord.
I know. That's virtually all I have on my list today is movie trailers.
Yeah.
Probably a few that you have, as usual.
But
I'll go ahead and dive into it. First and foremost is that Godzilla trailer we saw yesterday, dude.
Yeah, that wasn't even a new trailer. That one's been out.
Has it? That is not the trailer that I have seen.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm behind a trailer because when I saw that, there were way, way more awesome looks at all of the monsters. There were actually a little bit of just a hint kind of at the plot and the story there in it. And it was a much, much expanded upon version of what I had seen previously. And it just got me all excited.
Yeah, it does. That movie does. I was excited for like the old Godzilla movie. Godzilla is just one of my favorites. I feel like big monster movies can transport you no matter like what age you are. And at the end of the day, they can be as good a quality or as bad a quality really as they come. It doesn't matter. As long as you get some cool fight scenes with big monsters, you're still going to leave being like, that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
The movie wasn't there, but man, those fight scenes are pretty good.
Yeah. All right. After that, I've got the Stranger Things trailer.
Yes.
Which looks like it's going to be awesome. And as just right on par with all of the Stranger Things seasons before it, I really can't tell what's going to happen at all by the trailer, like whatsoever. Got pretty much zero information on the actual kind of story there, but I love it. I think Stranger Things is just, I think it lacks a lot of those typical plot lines anyway. Like it's a uniquely awesome example of how to just throw together a bunch of stuff and make a fantastic show because they're just that freaking good at what they do. So I'm excited to see it. Toy Story 4 trailer. I know that one came out. It might have actually been out when we did our halftime for last week's episode, but I had not seen it up until that point.
It was not.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about that. For a while, I had like the Toy Story 4 poster on my notes for today, and I was like, ooh, got to see the poster. And then I just got to looking and saw that there was an actual trailer out too. So that's pretty awesome. Everyone from our generation loves Toy Story. If you're not a huge Toy Story fan, then what are you even doing with your life? It's probably one of the single greatest. Like at least the first couple are up there at the very tippy top of animated films and Pixar. And then last but not least, or no, not last, second to last, Tacoma FD. Have you seen the trailer for this TV show yet?
Yes, I have, and only for the reason that my house pretty much stays on True TV if there's nothing else on to watch. Like, if there's nothing on to watch, it's like, oh, well, I know at least for sure, like, Impractical Jokers or Carbonaro Effect is going to be on. Might as well just put it on there. So I have seen the trailer a few times, and I am really excited for it.
Now, did you say that because it's True TV? Is that the network it's going to be on?
Yes.
Okay. I had no idea what network it was going to be on, but I do know, for those of you out there who are not aware, it's basically the Super Trooper guys are in a fire department now instead of state troopers or highway troopers. And
yeah, two of them.
Is it only two? I thought it was more than two.
It's only two. Only two are the main characters. The other ones will probably pop up at some point, but only two are the main characters.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought it was more than that, but either way, it still looks awesome, and I'm looking for just a good, funny show. Always looking for just a good, funny show to watch. Mm-hmm. So, pretty excited about that. And then, actually last, but certainly not least, is the trailer for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which will be.
This one was going to be on your list.
Now, Tarantino's 9th movie, and we all know that he still says he's going to stop at 10. So, this is a big one. The second, will be the second to last entry we ever get from him, potentially, which you never know. He's already counted the Kill Bills as one movie, and he doesn't count many other things that he's done before. So we may still get more stuff from him in the future after this movie and the next one. But man, we need to do an entire Tarantino podcast one day soon. Maybe we'll do that when Once Upon a Time in Hollywood draws a little bit closer.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was my plan the whole time, because that is one I'm extremely looking forward to.
Awesome. That's it for my list this week.
All right. Well, I guess kind of picking up, we were just talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was also on my list. Tarantino always, and I don't know why, it always kind of like, Tarantino I love, but the movies kind of go out of my mind until I see something for it. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I knew it was coming, but then watching the trailer, it just gets me super excited, because I'm like, oh yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, let me check the trailer out. And then I go, oh yeah, this is a Quentin Tarantino movie. And like, it's the same thing that happened, and I think I might have told this story on the podcast before, but in Django Unchained, I was like, yeah, I'll go see Django Unchained. And then sitting there, and then when Christoph Waltz at the very beginning gives the speech of him shooting the sheriff, not only are they not going to arrest him, they're going to pay him money, and he twists the entire thing around. I was like, oh yeah, this is a Tarantino movie.
Yep.
And that's the same kind of thing I got from the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think Tarantino is going to have a field day with this one. It looks awesome. I'm glad he's commenting on old Hollywood, and I'm glad that Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt are playing like best friends, who is an actor and a stunt double, and Leo looks really like emotional, and they somehow get wrapped up in like the Manson family in the late 60s in Hollywood, and it just looks like it's going to be a very interesting movie, a very cool movie, and so I'm really excited about that. The one that you didn't have on your list that I thought you might was, we got a new trailer for John Wick 3 this week as well, and that one looks really good. Very excited about that. I hope really that this may be the last John Wick movie. Not the last movie in the John Wick universe. I think there's a lot that can be explored with like the Continental and other assassins and stuff. But I think that they've made really good moves to, and I've talked to a few people about this before, the movies don't feel like, oh, here's another sequel because we wanted to make another sequel. It feels like one long story split up into movies. Like 2 felt like its own movie, but it had a very like seemingly real and organic start to it based off of the events that happened in 1. Like it seemed like, oh, okay, that's definitely what happened in 2. Like, of course somebody would come back and be like, hey, thought you were retired. Now that you're not, you got to do this thing that you promised me. Go kill somebody for me. Like it totally made sense why they made that sequel. And then setting up for this one totally makes sense why they needed to make a third one. They've all been connected together very well. And so I don't want them to keep doing that to the point where it's like, now they're just making a sequel to make a sequel's sake. I hope they stop at 3 and we get to wrap up John Wick's story, because then that will be a fantastic, I'm assuming, trilogy of movies to be able to sit down and watch back to back. It's just going to seem like one long story.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing worse than getting pumped to go watch a movie, and then after you watch that movie, realizing they just made it to make it. You know?
The biggest offenders I can think of are The Hangover Part 2 and The Hangover Part 3. And I'm not saying that I don't enjoy those movies, because they're both in my collection and I've seen both a handful of times each. They're funny, they're entertaining to watch, but they were definitely made because the first one did well.
Yeah, same with the American Pie movies. All of them. The entire, like, all 20.
I feel like 1 through 3 followed an organic enough story. 1 through American Wedding, I can see, like, okay, then they went to college and now they're getting married. We've gone full circle. They've grown up. They're not the immature kids that they used to be. Understandable. But then, yeah, like the 8 after that is a little bit like, okay, guys.
Yeah. Enough's enough. Stop in your head.
Yeah. So I hope they do that with the John Wick franchise. I hope we don't get to John Wick Presents Bandcamp soon.
Right.
Toy Story 4 was also on my list. A very interesting trailer. Seemed almost like a horror movie at first. Very, very dark and dismal. And it's going to talk about, like, the meaning of life and everything, and Disney's really good about this. I know we've talked about this before. Disney's really good about having things for adults and having things for kids. So the kids on the outside are just seeing a fun adventure with Woody and all the toys again. But then adults on the inside are probably seeing something really different. And the Toy Story franchise has always been really good, like you said, about speaking to specifically our generation and where we are. Like, I watched Toy Story 3 my senior year of high school. And it was all about Andy growing up and moving away. And I was like, oh my God, I can't, oh my God. Like, it just meant a lot. And now I know a lot of us have graduated college, and we're kind of like, a lot of people are kind of wandering aimlessly, trying to figure out basically what the rest of their life is going to be. Because up until this point, it's been like, okay, elementary school, middle school, high school, college. Like, it's been set. For 24 years, your life's been set. And now that you're 24 and you're kicked out, what are you going to do? And so the fact that Toy Story 4 is talking about kind of the meaning of life and everything and how somebody fits into the world, I think is still kind of talking to us. And I think it's meant for children and families and stuff. But I think the Toy Story franchise has its grasp firmly on us 90s kids who grew up watching these movies. And I don't think it's letting us go.
No, and I don't want it to.
No, and I don't mind it. If we get Toy Story 6 about how, like, oh, it's been 40 years and we're going through our midlife crisis now, but I'll go see it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then second to last thing on my list is Stranger Things 3. This trailer absolutely blew me away for Stranger Things 3. I was not expecting to get this, and I don't know why, because I love the Stranger Things franchise. But just the music and what it looks like the story is going to be absolutely blew me away. I think, and I gleaned a little bit of this from the trailer, looks like, because the Upside Down is now shut. They've shut the door. They shut it at the end of Stranger Things Season 2. But if you notice, there's a couple things of, like, people it looks like may have gotten, it looks like Billy got bit in the shower. Steve's getting hit with a syringe. It looks like people are being infected with something from the Upside Down. So the Upside Down itself isn't a threat anymore. There's no monsters coming out from the Upside Down, but I think it's something from the Upside Down that was already out that's now leaking out and infecting our world. And that, I think, is a really cool, and same as John Wick, it seems like a really cool and organic way to continue the story without being like, oh, you closed one breach, but there was another one. And I'm glad they're not doing that. And it looks really interesting.
Yeah, it looks super interesting.
And I'm very sad because I think Steve's going to die this year. And I hope he doesn't, but that's just what my movie sense is telling me.
Yeah?
Yeah,
really?
That's what it's telling me.
Because the sweaty scene thing, wasn't that him? And that was all, like, covered in sweat, freaking out?
Yeah, somebody was putting a syringe in his neck, and I think he's being infected with whatever's infecting everybody else in town.
Oh, man.
He's being turned into a monster or something. I just think he's run his storyline, and I like Steve, And it also scares me that we only see him in one outfit the entire movie, and we see everybody else in like a couple different outfits, you know? And yeah. And oh yeah, did I say movie? Yeah, in the trailer. And the argument can be made, you know, he's just at work and they just keep going to see him at work and that's just his work uniform. But it scares me that we only see him in that. It makes me think that he's not as big a part this season or kind of is gone after like the first 5 episodes or so. So we'll see. I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll see. I don't know, and I'm scared for him. And then the last thing on my list, Shazam finally got its Rotten Tomato score revealed, and it is like a 97%, and I am super excited for this one. I haven't hidden my excitement for it at all in this podcast or in my post on my Instagram page or anything. It absolutely looks like it is right up my alley. I love coming-of-age stories. I love superhero movies, and I love movies where people are put in situations over their heads, and that looks like a fantastic combination of all three. And I cannot wait to see it. And the fact that it's getting such good reviews. Now DC's starting to like kind of swing in an uprise. So hopefully it keeps going that way. And we get more movies like Wonder Woman and Aquaman and Shazam and less like Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, totally. And I don't know if getting away from Batman and Superman for a little while was a bad thing. Like, I think that was maybe one of the best things they've ever done is to be like, let's do Aquaman, let's do Wonder Woman, let's do Shazam, let's put a little bit of distance between us and the main two just for a moment. And well, maybe it really hasn't even been that long, but I think that has sort of allowed them to get on this huge upswing. And I think a lot of that too, as we've spoke about in the DC podcast, is I feel like they started out their own cinematic universe set in Batman's world. And now that they have fully broken out of just everything looks and feels like Gotham, it's allowed for us viewers to do a mental reset and almost forget the sins of the past, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that specifically Batman and Superman, because they've been the most prolific out of any of the DC superheroes so far, people just come into it with so many preconceived notions of who the characters are and who they're not. And if they even like mess up what one person's perception of the movie is by like one thing, then that movie's ruined for that person. And so the fact that they're kind of taking some of these lesser known characters like Aquaman and Shazam and stuff and putting them up in the ranks where people don't really have as many preconceived notions. I mean, like comic book fans, yes, but like regular moviegoers have an opinion on how Batman should act. But right. Regular moviegoers don't really have an opinion on how Shazam should act. And so that's why I think these movies are kind of in an upswing. Nobody's coming into it thinking, if this movie doesn't do this, I won't like it. They're just saying, give me a good movie.
I agree.
But that's it for my halftime. It's been an insane week for trailers, and I think we're only ramping up. There's many more movies to go this year, and we haven't even gotten a Lion King trailer where they speak yet. So I'm sure that'll be coming any day now because that's coming out over summer. So, I mean, there's many more trailers to come. But this week, it just seemed like every studio went, kind of been dry on trailers for a while. Let's drop like 8 at once.
Yeah, and I was just about to say it is because we are getting on through spring and, kicking off into summer here in just a couple of months, at which point we're actually going to start getting a lot of these movies. So right. They'd better start putting some trailers out here soon.
Yeah. And I think they're going to. I think we're just going to keep every week there's going to be one big trailer coming up, except if you skip like maybe 1 or 2 weeks.
Yep. Awesome. So should we get back to Captain Marvel?
Yeah, we're back to Captain Marvel now.
Okay. So talking about things that I just felt like weren't punched home as well as they should be. Fury's Eye, Stan Lee cameo, and the last thing that I was just waiting on and never came, was when she first met her best friend. Maria was her name, I believe. Mm-hmm. And you see them sitting there like, Captain Marvel kicks Fury out of the room. It's like, hey, why don't you go help the kid or whatever. Classic, like, leave us alone for a minute. And then I never felt like those two had their moment. Like, I feel like poor girl, even though she winds up coming on the adventure and helping to save the day and, being the co-pilot and all this and all that. Like, again, this just goes back to the complete lack of any substantial anything to Captain Marvel. It's like when they have the moment to be like, you were my best friend. That was the hardest thing. Then that was it. That's all you got. Like, that moment was just totally lackluster to me. I may be the only one that feels that way, but that's how I felt.
No,
Felt like they could have done so much more.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from for sure. I feel like the character of Maria, gosh, I'm trying to remember if her name is Marie or Maria, but I feel like she never properly got her due in the movie. I felt like she was a good character. I liked her character and I liked her being there, but she never got the moment of like, good, paid off. It was just like she was there to help Carol remember, is what I feel like in the movie. I feel like she was there to just facilitate Carol's story. She wasn't there of her own accord, which sucks because I like the character.
But she could have been the perfect tool to give more depth to Carol. Like, she could have been the one that, instead of it being a quick little flash of like us doing karaoke and then hanging out and with the kid and all of this and all that, like, I don't know. I just feel like it was a giant wasted opportunity. But I also agree with you that she wasn't given her due. And the kid, I forget her name now, but the little girl eventually becomes Captain Marvel.
Yeah, Monica.
Yes.
Yeah, and my wife brought up a really good point. She's like, instead of having Maria just tell her, oh, this is your backstory, and then having Monica be like, look at all these pictures. This is your backstory. My wife was like, why didn't they just show us that? Why didn't they just show us like Carol remembering and then like give us those memories? Which I think could have facilitated more of like Carol's backstory being fleshed out and more of the entire Rambo. Is it Rambo? It is Rambo.
It is Rambo. Yeah.
The entire Rambo family getting more of a backstory than they did.
Because she is a hero at some point and goes by something like Rambo or something similar, I believe. It was probably a play off of Rambo. Probably
was. Yeah. But yeah, I like why they didn't just show that. Was a weird thing to me. And like I said, this movie was short, so maybe it's on the cutting room floor somewhere and they actually did shoot it all, but it just didn't end up in the movie for some reason.
I don't know, but you just mentioned her opinion there, and you said earlier that she had a different take on this film. So I want to hear that.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a different take on the movie overall. Overall, she also felt like she enjoyed the movie, but she also felt like it was kind of meh, like not bad. But she did have some very interesting opinions. She said that she felt almost as if, kind of like you, that this movie was wasted. Like that it's the first movie that we've gotten. This is the 21st movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's the first one with a female superhero as the main focus. And she said it just focused on the dudes the entire time. It focused on Jan Rog and Talos and Nick Fury. And it wasn't even that female centric aside from just having Captain Marvel in it. And so she felt like that was kind of a wasted opportunity. And then one of the problems I have, and I've mentioned it on this podcast before, is I don't like when a movie forgets where it's coming from story-wise to like kind of show like hold its theme out on a silver platter. And I personally felt like that Captain Marvel did that when it started playing the I'm Just a Girl song at the final fight.
After she said that she had been living life with one arm tied behind her back, and then she squashes the thing that's holding her down just as I'm Just a Girl comes on.
Well, my main issue wasn't with the scene or anything in that, but I felt like it was the movie going, like winking at the camera and being like, are you seeing what we're doing here? But my wife had a totally different opinion. She said that was her favorite part of the movie. That scene was her favorite part. She loved it. She felt like that was the like girl power scene. And we went back and forth and talked about it for a really long time. And I am thinking about, and the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like thinking of her opinion. I mean, I don't I can I can scream my opinion from the top of the mountains, but if my wife is telling me from a woman's point of view that was empowering, then I can't really, I mean, I can have my opinion, but I can't be like, well, that's not how it should have been. So I've kind of ceded my point that, okay, I understand why it's in the movie, why it should be in the movie. Gotcha.
And I mean, in her defense, that was probably one of the most kick-ass scenes, like action-wise, in the movie.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
for sure.
that really was kind of her like come-up scene, like
Yeah.
totally was.
And
So
my argument of the whole thing wasn't that that scene shouldn't be in there. I just wish they hadn't played that song during that scene. That
so
was my
for
argument.
me, what got me in the same way is when I forget who it was. It had to have been a Skrull or maybe even Ronan or someone said something like she's not, or that's not I forget what he says, but he says that's a woman. He goes like that's not a weapon, that's a woman, or that's not a girl, that's a woman, or something along those lines.
Yeah, they
And it
said
was just like,
we're coming back for the weapon, and the guy said the energy core, and Ronan said no, the woman.
yeah. So that's where I felt like they were really just hitting pause on making a movie to wink at the camera and say, "Do you see what we're doing?"
Oh, I didn't get that from that scene at all. That scene went just fine for me. I mean, she was a woman, and that's who they were talking about. So I don't think they could have said anything differently. But I mean that they never come back because Ronan dies in Guardians of the Galaxy, so they
Uh,
never come back. But that was like my point of it, and half of my brain, and our coworker I was talking to had framed it this way, and I was like, yeah, that's a good way to frame it. But he said half of his brain was like, yeah, get him, Carol, but then the other half was like, that's a little heavy-handed. And so that's was kind of my opinion. But my wife saw something totally different, and so I've kind of ceded into her point and accepted the fact that, okay, I'm a man, I'm seeing it differently. And if this scene is truly like important to being like bringing the woman empowerment full circle in the movie, I mean, it is. And that was one of the main arguments that my wife was making. She's like, out of 21 movies, this is the one we get. We deserve this moment. And I was like, okay, like I understand, and I've thought more about it, and I have to take her at her point and stop trying to make mine.
still should have been Scarlet Witch. Still should have been Black Widow. But I'll give it.
We're getting Black Widow next year. I don't know when the Scarlet Witch Disney Plus series is coming out, but it's coming. More
I know.
Scarlet.
I think my biggest thing about all of that, just to sum up this portion, is I don't care who you make the movie for, but a lot of what I felt in this movie was a lot of what I felt again in episode 8, because they're bringing politics a little too close to that winking at the screen thing and being like, you see what we're doing here with our viewpoints and empowerment and all of this and all of that, because I then will see those movies, episode 8 and Captain Marvel, and then you see something out there like Wonder Woman, where you're like, even the hardcore feminists love Wonder Woman, hardcore comic book fans love Wonder Woman. It's a great movie. It entertained everybody. Nobody disliked it. Like, it is possible to make a movie for everyone. So I would say they need to strive. I would strive more in that direction than I would strive to like pull back the curtain to wink and nod, I guess, because that just feels like an improper way to do it. Since the dawn of movies, people have been making political and social statements through their movies while making the movies still awesome and the masses love them. And then there have been very successful movies that are like targeted at very specific demographics that literally pissed off the rest of the world. So like, I totally get that both can be successful, but with something like Marvel, with something like Star Wars, with something like DC, you need to tread carefully. And if you have the ability to knock it out of the park, which for the love of God, DC knocked it out of the park with the women's empowerment thing, then why do we feel like Marvel sucked wind on this one? That's really what I think it comes down to for me.
Yeah, that was another point I made, was like, was the Wonder Woman point, and the fact that they didn't treat her any differently. They treated her just like a hero. Like she wasn't a hero that was a woman. She was just a hero. And my wife also brought up a good counterpoint to that, and she said, "Well, but she is a woman." And so we do have to look at it through the lens of like that. She's like, I understand where you're coming from and what you're saying and just being like a hero, but she's a woman. And also Wonder Woman wasn't set in the 90s. It wasn't set when they had like all these poppy like girl power songs, but Captain Marvel was. So it fit more organically into Captain Marvel than it would have in Wonder Woman.
I don't know, dude. An entire island full of women that run the show.
Yeah, but it wasn't in the.
That's
She was saying
pretty.
like the
You,
song. It wasn't in the '90s. It
but
wasn't.
you have to admit the temptation for DC to crank that up to 11 was totally just as there.
Now in Wonder Woman 1984, we might see some more of that.
Yeah,
We might see more kind of in line with what we were seeing with Captain Marvel. But I think the fact that Wonder Woman was a period piece is why we didn't get a lot of that stuff in it.
and again, if Captain Marvel wasn't a like stubborn sore loser with no background, then I probably wouldn't have cared what they said and what they did.
Okay, well, getting off of this topic that you and I are having to tiptoe around very carefully because we aren't the demographic for the main
Yeah,
topic that we're talking
exactly.
about. And this was my second biggest problem with the movie, and it wasn't even really with the movie itself. It was with the marketing of the movie. This movie was touted as like, oh, the cinematic return of Phil Coulson, and oh, come see Ronan the Accuser, and back where what he was doing in the 90s, and come see Korath from Guardians of the Galaxy, back what he was doing in the 90s. And they were in all collectively like a 10 minutes of the movie. And I had a big problem with that. And that's kind of when we were walking out of the theater last night. And I was like, I have something that bothered me, but it's kind of more in like where I think the production company and the marketing team need to talk. And so it's just the way they marketed the movie. And, you know, I've fallen for this. It's like, it's the Expendables effect. You put the person's name on the poster so that people come for that person, even if they're in one scene, even if it's a cameo. You put their name on the poster so that people come see the movie.
Like Carnage.
Do what?
Like Carnage.
Exactly. And I call it the Expendables effect because they absolutely just load that poster down. They're like, oh, Jet Li, Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're all in like one scene a piece, you know, like they're not the main characters by far, but people might come see the movie because they're in it. And so that's kind of how I felt the marketing team handled this. And it was like, oh yeah, here's Coulson, here's Korath, here's Ronan. They're all going to be back and it's going to be awesome. And then it was kind of just, they were in 10 minutes. Ronan didn't even show up in the flesh until one scene at the end. He was just an image on a computer. And so the whole time I was kind of like, oh, well, that's sad. I was waiting for them to get more of a due because I was tricked again by the Expendables effect.
Yeah, totally.
But that was one of my issues. And it wasn't even really with the movie itself. It was just with the way it was marketed. Kind of the same as Amazing Spider-Man 2. I actually listened to the commentary on it, and they were like, one of the main critiques we always got of the movie was like, why did we tout Rhino as one of the main villains when he's in just the beginning and end scene? And they're like, we never wanted to do that. That was the marketing team going, oh, the Rhino's in this movie. Guess what? He's on the poster. And the creative team was like, no, don't do that. He's in 2 scenes. That's going to make people mad. Just have it be like a nice surprise in the movie. Don't have it be that he's a main character. That's going to make people mad when he's not. And the marketing team was like, well, he's going to sell the movie, so he's going to be on the poster. And that's kind of, I think, what happened with Captain Marvel, where maybe the creative team was like, no, they're in like 10 minutes. Don't say it's starring them because it's not. And the marketing team was like, yeah, but people will show up for them. And they're like, yeah, but just have it be like a cool surprise. Like we see them and it's like, oh, that's awesome. I'm glad that they made that call back. But instead it was like, come see our main characters, Ronan and Coulson and Korath. And then they were in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I like Ronan too. I like his character. I wish that we'd have got to see more.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Ronin was always one of those characters that like I would pick in video games from like long ago in the Marvel universe. So when you first see him in the MCU, it always made me happy. And then I'd actually apparently had not kept up enough to know that he was going to even be in this movie, which it kind of goes totally against what you were just saying.
Yeah.
But I was pretty excited. It totally like did. It had the exact effect you were just saying they should have when I saw it.
Yeah, and mine, they just were like, they were on the posters for it, specifically the posters I saw, and then marketing like some trailers and stuff with Coulson in it and showing all that kind of stuff. But specifically, they gave every main character a character poster. And Ronan and Korath and Coulson all got character posters. And so I was like, oh, they're going to be big parts of the movie. They weren't.
Yeah, I kept thinking to myself, like, where have I seen this cat before? Because I feel like I've seen that cat in another Marvel movie.
Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I have not consulted the Googles on this, but I seriously cannot place it either. But I swear to you, when I saw that cat, I was like, of course, the cat. And it's the cat that is not a cat. And that just fell, I don't know if it was deja vu or what, but for some reason, I feel like I had seen that before. Maybe it was an old video game or an old comic book or something. I don't know.
It looks like the cat looks like to me the cat from Men in Black.
Could be Orion.
Yeah, it looks like that to me.
Orion's belt. Well, okay, so let's talk about since we're talking about the cat, let's talk about the Tesseract. How did Mar-Vell get the Tesseract? Because I'm pretty sure that was the one. Because you said this earlier too, which is what I thought. That one was at the bottom of the sea the next time we see it, right? Because
Howard Stark scooped it up.
Yeah.
And so that part initially I did when I was watching the movie, I was like, how did Mar-Vell get that? But then I kind of thought about it more. And if Howard Stark scooped it up and brought it to S.H.I.E.L.D., we saw already that Pegasus was a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. or at least like in talks with it, like they were working together. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility that S.H.I.E.L.D. had the Tesseract and Mar-Vell was like, hey, I need that. And they're like, okay, here, do whatever you want with it. Because they didn't know what it was. They just knew like powerful people wanted it. Like one powerful person wanted it that they've known of the whole world. And so they're like, yeah, it's endless energy. I'm sure they were already doing testing on it, And so she's like, hey, yeah, even if she might have stole it too. It might have gone missing at some point in between when we last see it in the first Avenger and then when it reappears here in Captain Marvel. It might have gone missing because she saw it and took it. But yeah, that part at first I was like, hey guys. But then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
And one other thing, talking about expectations with this film, is that I heard a lot of people say that, like, when you get done watching this movie, you'll see that she's now the most powerful hero of, like, all the Avengers. And I definitely see how she's super, super powerful. But I don't know if she's the most powerful of all the Avengers.
Oh, I definitely think she is. I think she is the MCU Superman. Her and Thor.
If they're not careful, they could turn her into the MCU Superman, where she just, shows up and kicks everybody's ass, which she kind of did in this movie. But I definitely think that, what do we see other than her falling through or falling from space like on more than one occasion and just standing right up and walking away? Other than that, all we really see is her take down a few ships and stop a missile, or what it equates to a missile. I don't know. I feel like Thor, especially with Stormbreaker, is probably still, a god and more powerful than her. I feel like Hulk could probably do the same things that she was seen doing if he could breathe in outer space. Yeah, Hulk can't fly. I'll give you that. But Iron Man can fly.
Yeah, but he can't fly through a spaceship and punch it.
I think he probably could.
No.
I think he could. I think he's just chosen not to.
No way. Thanos punched him in the face and it shattered his helmet in Infinity War. No way could he punch through a spaceship and blow it all up.
No, that's Thanos.
The only person that I think that Carol can be comparable to right now is Thor. And the only argument that I can make on Carol's side saying that she is more powerful than Thor is that Thor's been alive for hundreds of years, and this is the power level he's reached. The fact that we're comparing both of them, and Carol only got her powers 6 years ago and only learned how to use them like 15 minutes ago before we see everything she can actually do in the movie, and that right then she's being compared to Thor makes her the more powerful. If she goes another like year or two, she's going to surpass Thor. You know, like we're seeing her at her infancy. The fact that she's already at Thor's level and he's been doing this for hundreds of years means that in another year or two, she could do some crazy stuff that Thor can't.
I don't know. I still don't believe it. I believe it when I see it. I mean, I think she was in the comic books. She is more powerful than Thor, so that would be accurate. But judging off of what I've seen in this movie, in particular, just looking at this movie, I didn't get the feeling that she was like insanely powerful.
No, that was kind of what I was saying, that I think she's in her infancy in this movie, and she's at Thor's level in this movie. But looking into the future, not like in this movie, looking like at what we'll see of her in Endgame, because it's been nearly 20 years by that point, what we'll see of her in Endgame will be infinitely more powerful than what we see now, because now she's had 20 plus years to hone these abilities and practice them and use them. Whereas what we saw in Captain Marvel was just 15 minutes ago, she was like, took the thing off her neck and then started doing crazy stuff. But now she's had 20 plus years to train. And I think that she'll be more powerful than Thor.
Well, I'm calling it right now. Mark my words. If she shows up and just kicks everybody's ass and has like zero development or arc at all in Endgame, that will mark the downturn for the Marvel MCU. Because
I don't think she will. I think Marvel will be smarter than to do that. I don't think that they'll pull a full Justice League Superman like they did in that movie, where everybody was.
I didn't think they'd pull episode 8 either, but here we are.
Well, I think that they've learned enough from Superman himself, where even at the end of the Justice League movie, the other 4 members of the Justice League, who are infinitely powerful, Flash, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman, all combined, insanely powerful, and each could probably take on Superman at some point. But then they've all been fighting in Justice League, and then all of a sudden Superman just shows up at the end and he's like, I got it, and just punches the guy like twice and he's done.
That's exactly how I feel. That's exactly what I feel they're going to do with her.
No, yeah. I don't think so.
Totally.
I don't think so.
I'm feeling it, dude. My spidey senses are tingling.
I don't think that's what they're going to do. I hope that's not what they're going to do.
Well, we hope.
And especially because Endgame needs to be a movie about the original 6 Avengers. And so I think that they're going to get their due.
They're going to get their ass kicked, and Captain Marvel's going to show up and kick everybody's butt with 2 punches and save the day.
No, because at the end of Captain Marvel, she's already on Earth. So when Endgame starts, she's there. And so there wouldn't need to be an entire 3-hour movie if that's what happened. She's already there, you know. There wouldn't need to be this giant movie worth of telling. It would be a 15-minute short they released of, they were like, hey, yeah, you got to go get Thanos. And she'd be like, okay, got it. And Thanos is still infinitely powerful. He has the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, true.
It's cracked, but I mean, he's still insanely powerful. He can do literally whatever he wants. My theory on Endgame, and now we're kind of getting into more, this is the quick pitch.
Yeah, there you go.
My theory on Endgame, and it's only because at the very end of the last trailer we got, where we see everybody in their quantum suits walking, you know, the only 3 people that weren't in that scene that we know are going to be in the movie are Bruce Banner, Thor, and Captain Marvel. And I think that what the main plan is going to be is those are the 3 heaviest hitters, and they're going to be Thanos' distraction team. They're going to be the ones tasked with keeping Thanos not in the know of what the other Avengers are doing,
jumping through time or whatever the movie ends up being. And so they're going to go off on their own mission together, and they're going to be like the fighting people. And that could even be like the scene where they're saying, hey, Thor, this girl's going to go with you and she's going to help out. And that could be like when he calls Stormbreaker to him and he's like kind of testing her out and he goes, all right, yeah, I like her. Let's go. That could be like kind of the test to see if she's cool enough to come on the mission with him. And so I think that's going to be kind of her arc in Endgame, is going to be more of like the distraction team.
Only time will tell. I have high hopes like always.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and technically we could be having this same conversation like at the first Thor movie, you know, because that movie was not the best movie ever either. And so we could be having the same conversation and being like, I hope he doesn't just show up and punch Loki like 2 times in the Avengers and then that's it, because that would suck. And they didn't. They found a way to do it. So I mean, Marvel's smart, and they know that we're smart, and I don't think they're gonna like spoon feed us character stuff in order to make a movie that everyone's been looking forward to for 11 years. Just this like, oh yeah, she punched him twice, got it, and her movie just came out the same year. There's no way they would do that to us.
I hope you're right, sir.
Yeah, only time will tell, but that's not the vibe I'm getting. And it might be because I really like Captain Marvel. And actually one of the notes I wrote down was, I can't wait to see her take on Thanos. Like, I think it's going to be another kind of like Doctor Strange versus Thanos match where we're going to see a lot of very interesting, whereas Doctor Strange's was more mind bent, like a mental fight with Thanos almost, and Thanos was using the Infinity Gauntlet to fight back mentally. I'm very interested to see Captain Marvel and Thanos fight physically, because we've already seen Hulk is incredibly powerful in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, but Thanos is like a tactician. He understood what Hulk's next moves were going to be after like 3 punches and started coming back hard, and he didn't even have the Infinity Gauntlet assembled at that time. And he whooped Hulk's ass. So I'm very excited to see Thanos versus Captain Marvel and how that fight's going to go. Because we're going to get one.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
For sure.
And one thing we do have to mention before we wrap this up is the main Skrull I thought was awesome.
Yeah, Talos?
Yeah,
I like
great. I don't know who played him.
Ben Mendelsohn, who also played Orson Krennic in Rogue One.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, he's been popping up in all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so I thought he did a good job. And I love seeing more of the background. I love getting more into the different races in the universe. And, there was a lot of awesome things in this movie. But at the end of the day, I feel like they did Captain Marvel wrong. I feel like they could have treated her better.
I feel like they did Captain Marvel right. I had issues with the movie, but overall, I thought it was very enjoyable. Definitely, you mentioned that it was kind of like lower towards your middle tier Marvel movies, correct?
Yep.
It's probably, for me, lower, but like top tier. I enjoyed it that much, and I really liked the 90s feel of it and the characters and everything, but I really did enjoy it a lot. But either way it shakes out, we're going to see her again in a month when we go see Avengers Endgame, and we're going to see how her character has been fleshed out over the past 20 plus years, and everything that's been going on with Captain Marvel and how she's going to be interacting with the Avengers and everything like that. So I'm very excited to see that. I'm very excited to see Carol Danvers' story continue. And I'm also very excited to see this episode of the Scruffy Movies podcast end, because I feel like it's been a long one.
All righty.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know your opinions. Everyone's entitled to their own. We want to know, what did you think? Do you think her character wasn't very fleshed out? Do you think that this was exactly what you wanted to see out of the movie? What do you think is going to happen with Captain Marvel in Endgame? This is a character that I'm very excited to hear other people's opinions on, because everybody has had a different one that I've talked to. Literally everyone has had a different one. They've had similar opinions about the movie, but about Captain Marvel herself, I feel like everybody's opinions have been totally different. And so it's a very interesting conversation to have. So let us know below. comment on Instagram, send me direct messages, whatever you want to do. I'm very interested to know what people think about this movie. And again, if you want to enter to win free digital copies of Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, all you got to do is comment the code word TORCH below on the YouTube video you're watching right now, or send me a direct message on Instagram at Scruffy Movies. Again, the code word is TORCH. Please follow us on Instagram at Scruffy Movies.
And Crockalicious.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.